Hey everyone, it's Eddie Kalegi reminding you that each and every episode of Sports Speak is powered by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a one-stop shop for tickets to concerts, sporting events, and so much more. And now you can use the promo code SportsSpeak on the site to get $20 off your first purchase. So what are you waiting for? SeatGeek. Let there be live. And now on to the show. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Sports Speak Live, powered by SeatGeek. Promo code SportsSpeak, all caps, one word, $20 off your first purchase. Eddie Kalegi here. The NBA 2023-24 regular season is complete, and I think a very compelling postseason is on the way over the next 2 months. Now, the NBA definitely has gotten its share of criticism over the last couple of years, but I think the competition level in terms of the storylines with the teams certainly are going to make this playoff very, very interesting. Joining me to discuss it, Andrew Bellows, Nick Pocchia here to start it off. And Poach, I'm going to go to you first. So we did our preview episode. I'm going to flash the graphic up here as well for the viewers at home. Our picks have not gone particularly well, particularly mine, because I thought Adrian Griffin was winning Coach of the Year and he was out after 43 games. But in general, the common denominator was that a lot of us were very high on the Milwaukee Bucks, and that's where I'm going to start things here. Milwaukee is the 3 seed, but Giannis got hurt late in the regular season. Doc Rivers is a choke artist, and Damian Lillard clearly hasn't been completely at the level that he's played in the past. And the Pacers, interesting opponent. Halliburton, when he's on. Miles Turner's great too. And they did make it to the championship in the play-in. So how much of a fight do you think Indiana can put up against Milwaukee, especially if Giannis misses some games?
Yeah, I think, which obviously we don't know the extent of the injury right now. There's a lot of different reports coming from different angles. If it was a situation, hypothetically, where Giannis missed the entire series, not saying anyone's saying that, I would take the Indiana Pacers. I think if you remove Giannis from this equation, I think they would be the better team. We got to remember this is an Indiana Pacers team that has beat the Bucks 4 out of 5 times when they played this season, and making that addition of Pascal Siakam at the trade deadline is huge. This is a team that is better than the team that was already beating Bucks with Giannis right now. Obviously, that outside of the plan was mostly a regular season environment, but this is a very good Indiana team. I know you mentioned like the first episode we did, that was like my sleeper team was the Pacers, right? And we've really seen them kind of come to fruition. Miles Turner, obviously excellent, can shoot the ball, can defend around the rim. Tyrese Halliburton has had an excellent season, really, really hot to start the year, slowed down a little bit, but I think he's going to pick up that intensity, kind of get back to where he was in a playoff environment. So I think with all those, things up in the air. Never could count out Damian Lillard, especially if he's kind of the guy again that may help the Bucks a little bit in kind of a weird way. But I would take Indiana to win this series outright if Giannis missed the entire series. If he's going to miss a few games, it's very hard to tell. But I would probably still stick with Indiana in like 7 games. But listen, I think this is going to be an excellent series. Like you mentioned, we were high on the Bucks. I definitely don't view them as a championship contender at this time, and I think they should be on upset watch early on here.
Oh, they definitely should, especially when you consider again who their coach is. Doc Rivers has not proven to be able to escape the second round much in the last really decade and a half since he had those good Celtics teams in the late 2000s. Andrew, let's transition to the Celtics. I mean, they've been the class of the league this year in the regular season, and I think people underestimate just how good this roster is. Jrue Holiday is a bona fide all-star caliber player, as is Derek White. Kristaps Porzingis can score the basketball. When Jaylen Brown doesn't have to use his left hand, he's a star, and Jason Tatum actually is a star. So you've got that lineup, plus Joe Mazzulla, who, a credit to him, replacing Ime Udoka, has kept that team right where it was when Udoka took them to the finals 2 years ago, and they're hungry after the loss to Miami in the conference finals last year. So, I mean, a lot of people think the East can go chalk with Boston just going all the way and running through it. How easy do you think the path is really going to be for them?
I don't know if the path is easy, but I definitely think they're the best team. I do think they'll win the East. I think their main problem is going to be that they're going to have to probably play Philly or Miami round one. And those teams don't roll over easy. So that's probably going to go at least 5, 6, 7 games. I think their second round matchup, if they win that, they'll probably sweep Orlando or beat Cleveland in like 5 games. And I honestly don't think there's many other teams in the East that match up with them. I recently saw a graphic on Instagram. This guy ranked the top 20, I forgot the account name. He ranked the top 20 defenders in the league. The Celtics had 4 players in the top 20. And that was just unbelievable to see that. Like I think it was Porzingis, Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, and Derek White were all there. And a team like that with that much defense and also some scorers like Brown and Tatum, they're just so versatile in every single way. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say this is the best Celtics team since '08. I definitely think this is a very well-rounded team. And although they have to play Miami, Philly, probably round one, I think they're going to breeze through the East, honestly.
Yeah, I think so too. Even with those two formidable opponents and Poach, that's where we transition to the Knicks because the Knicks undisputed. They've been a great team this year. They play a style of basketball that the NBA hasn't really seen in the last decade. That defense is first, and you have three guys in Brunson, Hart, and DiVincenzo that even with Julius Randle out, the chemistry that those three have from playing at Villanova and winning a national championship together has clearly rubbed off in the NBA. The OG Anunoby trade is paying off. The fact that of all the youngsters, Deuce McBride is the one they kept is also paying off. And even with no Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Hartenstein has done a great job at center. But I almost feel like the Knicks would have been in a better spot had they gotten the 3 seed instead of the 2, because I think they'd easily ram through the Pacers. But having to play either the Sixers or the Heat first round, because I know Philly is a 7 seed, 8 seed deal in the play in, but again, this is the same Sixers team that still has Joel Embiid, who, had he played the full season, may have won MVP again, and Tyrese Maxey, who's emerging. And Miami, I think we've learned from the last 5 years, it does not matter what seed they have. They're a team that can contend for a championship each and every year because Jimmy Butler just goes to another level in the postseason. So, how confident are you in the Knicks, and how far do you think they can truly go?
Yeah, I think the ceiling for this team, I would still say, is the conference finals. Like you mentioned, there's a a very scary matchup, whether it be the Miami Heat or the Philadelphia 76ers in the first round. I don't take that lightly at all. I think getting out of that series will be the most challenging thing for the Knicks, right? Those are both good teams. The 76ers in particular, as if we're talking about low seeds who can make a run, it's unquestionably them, right? Obviously, this is a team that would probably be where the Knicks are, be the number 2 seed, had Joel Embiid stayed healthy. I think that series kind of brings up a lot of interesting things. I know there's been a lot of talk after the All-Star break about the officiating, kind of the idea that the friendly whistles that were going on and all the fouls that were being called early in the season, the NBA, didn't like what went on in the All-Star game and has really pulled back. We haven't really seen Joel Embiid extensively in that new environment. Not to say that that was, it's a part of his game, right? A part of his game was how many free throws he was shooting, how many fouls he was drawing. So I'm kind of just curious to see him in that environment. Also, we're not sure how healthy he is. He sat out the other day. The team indicated that it was precautionary. He obviously is coming off a serious injury. So there's a lot of question marks with Philly, who I anticipate the matchup will be. In regards to the Knicks specifically, like you said, this has been, a very fun year. This team is really, really, really good, really cohesive how they play together. It's a shame not having Julius Randle, but I would remind everyone the past 2 times the Knicks have been in the playoffs, Julius Randle, I love the guy, has not been good, right? He's not been good. I would argue to say he was
Yeah.
detrimental to both of those teams against the Atlanta Hawks a couple years ago and last year as well. So I would, make the point the Knicks are like 17-4 with OG Anunoby when he plays. If he's healthy, I do think this team has a puncher's chance against Philly. I think that will be a good series, probably 6 or 7 games. Either way it goes, I'm definitely not ready to write off the Knicks. And should they advance to the second round, like we just discussed, there's a lot of question mark with the Bucks. Who knows if they end up being the team in the second round? And then, like you said, if they would get a shot at Indiana in the second round, I think that's a very favorable matchup for them. So if you can go that far, not saying that would be easy to do, they could be a conference finals team, absolutely. And anything could happen in the NBA, as we know, seeing last year what happened with the Miami Heat and the Celtics. So, definitely would be an interesting series, would probably take Boston, like you guys alluded to. But, this is a team that can win 2 series, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to think like a year ago, too, a lot of fans didn't know if Tom Thibodeau was the guy for the job, and he's clearly proven with his rotations, he knows what he's doing. So credit to him and what he's done with the Knicks this year. The East, I think, though, for the most part, is going to go pretty chalk. Maybe the Bucks get upset. Maybe the Sixers or Heat win a series. The Cavs and Magic, I mean, both good stories, but Cleveland proved last year when Jared Allen said the lights were brighter than he expected, that they're not very good in these situations. And I mean, Donovan Mitchell, love the guy, but historically, he's not been a big playoff performer either. So, and Orlando's just too young. They're a little ahead of their time. But if we go to the Western Conference, I truly believe that of those 10 teams, 7 of them have the legit capability to make a run to the conference finals because it's just so wide open. And we never really see that many upsets in the playoffs in terms of the seeding, but you have a lot of inexperienced teams that got higher seeds in the West, and the veterans, the savvy ones, lower seeds, some even coming out of the play-in tournament, which is going to make it really interesting. And Andrew, let's just start with the obvious team that everybody wants to talk about, even though they're probably not going to go very far, and that's the Los Angeles Lakers, who Anthony Davis stays healthy all year, and then he tweaks something in his back last game of the season. They get to play the Pelicans again. They have 2 shots to make it out of the play-in. I think they'll be able to do that, but regardless of who they match up against, I just don't see this team lucking out the way they did last year in the postseason. LeBron James and Austin Reeves did a great job last year getting them all the way to the conference finals. But with how stacked the Western Conference is this year and how healthy the rest of the West, frankly, is going into the playoffs, I don't think they're going to have that same luxury.
Yeah, I'd agree to an extent. I think the playoffs is very matchup based. Teams will perform differently against other teams. And the Lakers are in a really interesting position because if they do get the 7 seed, they have to play Denver. And personally, I don't think that's a good matchup for them at all. I think Denver is the best team in the West. They, I think, got swept last year in the conference finals. I think we literally have a repeat of that series this year, should they get the 7 seed. But if they get the 8 seed, I feel like it's kind of interesting because they match up very well with the Thunder because the Lakers are a really good rebounding team. And that's like the Thunder's number one weakness is rebounding. They are a terrible, terrible rebounding team. Compared with all the other strengths they have, they're very good at pretty much everything else, but they just really are bad at rebounding. And in the playoffs where teams are missing shots more often, teams are playing tighter defense, that could really come to hurt the Thunder. And I definitely think that's why I don't think they'll go far. I really like them as a team, but overall, if the Lakers get the 8 seed, I think they'll win that series. I really do. Um, and even if the Thunder get past whoever it is there, I don't see them beating Denver. I think Denver is the team to beat in the West.
Yeah, the Thunder are a weird deal because personally I see it like this. They're a hit or miss team. I could see them easily getting knocked out in the first round, but with how well they've played against top competition and the fact that they made it they have the experience. They did at least play in the play-in round last year, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been excellent this season, not to mention both Jalen Williams and Josh Giddey and Chet Holmgren. They feel like a team that does have the capacity to go on a deep run if they get on a heater, as they've been all year long. But it's really difficult because just the way the West was, and because it was so stacked up behind the top 3, you could get a really good team in the play-in out of that first round. You could have to go against LeBron James. You might have to go against Steph Curry in the opening round. And, if the Warriors are shooting the basketball well and they can kind of turn back the clock a little bit with everyone else besides Steph Curry, that's another interesting team. We're recording this Tuesday night. They're playing in the elimination game against the Kings tonight in the play-in tournament, Poach. And I know the Warriors have not been that good this year. Draymond Green, Klay Thompson both look pretty washed, but they do have some complementary pieces. Podashevsky has been good as a shooter. Trace Jackson Davis, their other rookie from Indiana, has had a good year. Wiggins has been serviceable. They do still have Jonathan Kuminga. It feels like, while I don't think the Warriors are going far, if they can make it out of the play-in round, I think they're another team that if things go right, they could really make things interesting against Oklahoma City, just purely because of their experience.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eddie. Like you said, this is when we talk about experience, it doesn't get more experienced than the Golden State Warriors still having that kind of, big 3, quote unquote, not as much anymore, still together back from those championship days. Like you said, they got a challenge tonight, the Sacramento Kings, good basketball team. We know they were a high seed last year. We know they went to 7 games with the Golden State Warriors. That's going to be a challenge. If they get at it tonight, they play, whoever loses that Lakers Pelicans game, which will be a challenge, irrespective of which one of those teams. But like you said, if we do get to that point where they make the playoffs and they're in a matchup with the Oklahoma City Thunder, it's such an interesting matchup, right? You have this super, super young and inexperienced team that is more talented, we would argue right now. And then you have this super as experienced as you could be team that is less talented at this moment in time. So it's kind of just to see those, not even stylistic duality, but just kind of the life stages of those two teams. In a weird way, it may end up being kind of a changing of the guard moment as we move into this new era in the NBA, or it's a situation where the Golden State Warriors say we're not done yet. Like you said, Jonathan Kuminga has been a revelation for this team this year. Brandon Pajemski has been outstanding. Trace Jackson Davis, who you mentioned. So they've kind of integrated some of these younger players who have played big roles. And I'm very interested to see should that matchup happen. I would probably opt to pick the Thunder in that series, but I definitely wouldn't count Golden State out. And then, like we saw with the Heat last year, from there, who knows? You got Steve Kerr, an excellent coach, Mark Daigneault on the other side, but can't bet against Steve Kerr in the playoffs, can't bet against Steph Curry in the playoffs. So that team definitely has a puncher's chance to make some noise in the West.
One other experienced team that, didn't really have everything go their way, but they have played for a championship before, and they have a champion as their number one guy, the Phoenix Suns, who finished with the 6th seed. They do stay out of the play-in round, but that combination of three ball dominant scorers in Booker, Beal, and Durant didn't really work out all that well, especially since Beal was hurt for a good part of the season. And because they committed so much money to those three, the team's depth really isn't there. However, they catch a Minnesota Timberwolves team that had that crazy series against the Grizzlies a couple years ago, back in the playoffs now with a better Anthony Edwards, a now healthy Karl Anthony Towns, plus Rudy Gobert, who has still been serviceable this year. And they're one of the tallest teams in the league. And I don't know if that plays to them as a strength or as a weakness in the matchup with the Suns. Bellows, what do you think on that?
I think it's a really interesting series. I think when you look at this series that we currently have set in stone, that's probably the one that's hardest to predict for me, because those two teams are very different from each other. One of them has a lot of ball dominant players, a lot of like ISO game with Booker and KD. And then you have the Timberwolves where they rely on like a lot of interior defense. And obviously you have Anthony Edwards and Karl Towns to kind of carry the offense. So it's really hard to predict, but for me, I think I'd pick experience. I pick experience in that series just because I think the Suns have players who have been there, done that. They have a lot of even complementary pieces. Like I think Grayson Allen is a great piece. I think Nurkic is a good piece as well. So I don't think their depth is as lacking as some people would say it is. So I think I would take them, but I definitely think this is going to go a long series. I think it's going to be like 6 or 7 games. And I also think a lot of it depends on KD himself, because I think he's going to be the X factor in this series. Can he do it at the age he is? Can he still kind of put up 25, 30 a night? And if possible, does he have to carry that team? Because you could have an off night with Booker and Beal, and then KD's left to kind of carry the slack. I would say he is ready for that task. Because I've never want to doubt KD, so I'm taking the Suns in 6 or 7 games.
Yeah, I'd never doubt him either because he always seems to turn it on in the playoffs and find a way to get buckets. And I wouldn't worry too much about Devin Booker either because as long as he's not going against Dallas, he tends to find ways to make things happen offensively in the playoffs. On that subject of the Mavs, Poach, I think maybe maybe the most interesting first round series. Mavs and Clippers. You got this Dallas team with Luka Doncic, who's had an MVP caliber year, and Kyrie Irving, who has really resurrected his career per se in Dallas this year. No drama, just basketball, and he's been really good and on the floor most of the season, besides when he got hurt earlier in the year. And then you got this Clippers team that has a lot of older players, but a lot of experienced guys. You've got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who have both stayed healthy as the two cornerstones. James Harden and Russell Westbrook, who have both clearly taken steps back this year, but can still contribute, even though they're not in their previous MVP forms. And the Clippers might be the deepest team in the NBA playoffs, just with the amount of different pieces and different schemes that they can use. They also have a great center in Zubac. So Clippers, Mavs, who do you think has the advantage here?
Yeah, I've thought about this series a lot. Like you said, I think this is right up there with that Phoenix Minnesota series, just as far as like a pick 'em, right? You could really make an argument in either direction. I would lean towards the Mavericks right now. I think it's just a situation of two teams trending in different directions. Obviously, the Clippers kind of started slow after the James Harden trade. They got really, really hot for an extended period of time, have not been as great as of recent. And the Dallas Mavericks kind of in the other direction. After the trade deadline, I really like that uh, acquisition, of Daniel Gafford, who I think is a very good player, can rebound, can put the ball back to the basket, and has been a nice addition for that team. And they've been very hot since that point. Like you mentioned, it's kind of an interesting year with Kyrie Irving. I feel like for the past, 4 or 5 years, really since leaving Cleveland, every year was a Kyrie Irving drama year. Has not been the case this year. He's been on the court, he's been balling, he's been playing very well, and you're finally starting to see him and Luka Doncic. That fit doesn't seem so awkward anymore. And when that fit is not awkward, we're talking about as far as creating shots, two of the five best players offensively in the game of basketball, in my opinion. And I think that duo is going to be very difficult to defend in a playoff environment. And I'm not, I'm always suspicious with the Clippers that like Paul George or Kawhi Leonard. I know you've mentioned they've been healthy. I'm always suspicious with the health stuff. Like it just wouldn't shock me if there's just some weird. Like every year there's a weird Kawhi injury at this time of year. Like every year since that Raptors championship season. So I'm just gonna go with the Mavericks. I really like the Mavericks a lot, especially if they were to advance. Play the Oklahoma City Thunder in the second round, for example. Like I think they're kind of my dark horse team in the West, and I think this is a situation where Luka Doncic really makes his mark and kind of maybe has his kind of coming out playoff performance and really makes a deep run.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way on Dallas because it's a weird situation because we've seen teams go with two superstar players who are point guards at heart and it not work before. When James Harden and Russell Westbrook were both in Houston, Houston is a prime example of that. And even James Harden and Chris Paul before that. But Kyrie and Luka just seem to complement each other's games so well, and the chemistry is there. And this is also a Mavs team that's so hungry, especially when you think back to last year when they were in position to not just be in the play-in, be a top 6 seed, trade for Kyrie, and then tumble and miss the playoffs entirely. And now this year, they sustain, they're consistent. And again, I feel the same way. As good as the Clippers are and as deep as they are, something always happens with Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs. It's just the way it goes. Let's finish with this. We have a chance here to redeem ourselves from our picks before back in October, and adjust based on what we've seen and who we think is going to win it all. I'll start it off. I think the West. I like Poach's idea with Dallas. I like OKC to win a series, but I think Dallas has a way to make it to the conference finals, and I just think Denver is too good. I think Denver ends up playing Phoenix, and they get through, and it's Denver and Dallas. Good series there. Luka versus Jokic is going to get a lot of the people who are big into the MVP debate fired up, but I like Denver to come out of that game. I'm still very high on the Nuggets. And then on the other side, I still think the Bucks squeeze through past the Pacers just barely, but they come across the Knicks, who will be battle tested from a series with either the Heat or the Sixers. And I think the Knicks get past the Bucks, Knicks Celtics, Boston wins that, Boston and Denver, and I think the Celtics finally win a championship. So I'll go Celtics in 7 in a big time series against the Denver Nuggets. Andrew, what do you have as your picks now?
Yeah, so I would say I'm gonna have the Clippers winning against the Mavericks, and I think the Clippers will beat anyone who they play. I think they'll beat the Thunder, the Lakers, Warriors, whoever's there. I really like the Clippers this year. I think they have a lot of depth, a lot of good defense. So I'm pretty high on them. And then on the other side, I would say Denver is going to make it to the conference finals. I think they beat whoever the playing team is, and I think they beat Minnesota or Phoenix. I think, as I said, Phoenix comes out of the series, so Denver would beat Phoenix. Um, and then I think Denver is going to beat the Clippers in the conference finals. So Denver in the finals. And on the other side, I would say Boston is going to make the conference finals. As I said before, they'll kind of be in a deeper series with either Philly or Miami, but then they'll kind of breeze over Orlando or Cleveland. And on the other side, I think the Knicks will win. They're probably that whoever they play, Philly or Miami, that is going to be a great series. I do think the Knicks will come out of it. Right now, I'm gonna say the Bucks. I think Chris Middleton, his impact is kind of underrated, and especially in the playoffs where he's getting at the ball a lot. Definitely like him a lot, and I think the Bucks are going to kind of ride him for the first few games, and Giannis comes back, and then they'll end up taking the series later. So I think it'll be Bucks Knicks, and I agree with you. I think the Knicks will win that series because they'll be battle tested. So it'll be Knicks Celtics in the conference finals, and as much as I want to pick my Knicks, I think the Celtics would win that. So I have the same finals as you, Denver and Boston, but I'm going to say that Denver's going to repeat. I think Denver is going to win it all this year over Boston.
And lastly, Poach, your picks.
Yeah, pretty similar to you guys. Just quickly on the overall thing, I would take my one disagreement. I do like Indiana to win that first round series against the Milwaukee Bucks. I like Dallas, like we discussed before. I like Dallas and Denver in the conference finals as well. Just kind of echoing what you had said, Eddie. In the Eastern Conference, the one zag I will make is I could make an argument, which I think is a little bit weird given the seeding, that this may be the 76ers best opportunity to actually get out of the second round. A lot of that's contingent on if Joel Embiid's healthy, but I love my Knicks, but like we mentioned, Julius Randle is not there. This team is not fully healthy. Obviously, the rest of the team is, but missing, your second best player. So if they go, they beat the Knicks, then you end up with either a Milwaukee team that, like we mentioned, is hurt, or an Indiana team that's very inexperienced. Excuse me. I just have a feeling. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to see the Knicks in the conference finals, but I would go Boston, Philly in the conference finals. In the Eastern Conference. In the Western Conference, I would go with Dallas and Denver. And then similar to you guys, I would take Boston, Denver in the finals. And I think this is the year Boston gets it done. It's no fun. I'm sure we're all thinking of it too. It's no fun to kind of pick the chalk teams, but I think sometimes it's easy to feel the pressure to get too cute and go in a different direction when similar to how I felt about March Madness, where we're just like, UConn beat everybody all year. They're the best team. Boston has beat everybody all year. They've given us no reason to pick against them. So I'm going to go roll chalk there, Boston over Denver in probably 6 or 7.
It's just so crazy though in the West because I feel like there's the Celtics as the number one team, and then you could legitimately put 5 or 6 Western Conference teams before you get to the Knicks or the Bucks. It's just so stacked in that Western Conference, which always tends to be the case in that conference. But we shall see where it goes from here. Postseason starting tonight. Next week, we'll have our NFL draft special. So thanks to Nick Pocchia and Andrew Bellows for joining us in this episode of Sports Speak Live. Follow us at Sports Speak Live on Twitter and use our promo code SeatGeek on SeatGeek, Sports Speak, all caps, one word, to get $20 off your first purchase on SeatGeek. But until next time, I'm Kalegi signing off. Enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you ahead of the NFL draft.